Hi guys, this is Caitlin Troy, again just continuing my summary of chapters 10 and 11 from Whistling Vivaldi. So my chapter 11 summary. This chapter is titled Conclusion, Identity as a Bridge Between Us. This is the last and final chapter from Whistling Vivaldi, so it will be rather brief. Steele discusses the strides that we as a nation, like President Obama's election, have made to becoming a post-racial society. However, we still deal with identity contingencies and how they affect a person. Thinking back to the beginning of this book throughout chapter 1, Steele defines this notion of identity contingencies as, quote, the things you have to deal with in a situation because you have been given a social identity. Additionally, quote, contingencies are circumstances you have to deal with in order to get what you want or need in a situation. These contingencies indicate stereotypes that are attached to a person's identity and can have a negative effect on an individual. So yes, President Obama's election in 2008 was historic for him becoming America's first African-American president. Although that was a huge stride to becoming this post-racial society, there's still much that needs to be done because we still do deal with identity contingencies in a negative way. Steele gives a description of a variety of techniques, including critical feedback, narrative formation, and fostering intergroup conversation that can contribute to the weakening of identity threats and seem to lead to greater success for minorities. Steele mentions several times throughout this final chapter that he hopes his book can make readers optimistic and hopeful. When we think about all the work that still has to be done, it can feel really daunting, overwhelming, and frankly scary. But he keeps saying that he wants this to be a beacon of hope that we can accomplish these things as long as we keep these tools that he has spoke about in mind. He shares how Obama himself called for all Americans of all identities to come together to build towards an era of progress. Obama understood that by winning the presidency, we hadn't arrived to a post-racial society. There was still a lot of work to be done. Even though we had come so far, there's still much to do. Obama inspired many people not to ignore their identities, but to celebrate them and use them to understand other people's identities. Again, to not create these divides, but to come together. My 2 discussion questions from this final chapter. So number 1, so people shouldn't try to hide their identities. They should celebrate their identities while also understanding that identity and society's awareness and perception of identity plays a huge role in dictating behavior. Although, and I spoke about this a lot throughout chapter 10, but although there can be anxiety around difficult conversations involving race, it's important for dominant groups to push past their fear of sounding prejudiced and to participate. As we've been learning in class readings throughout these past 2 weeks, this work cannot be solely done for minorities in society. So like I spoke in chapter 10, although I do feel a lot of anxiety around engaging in these conversations and engaging in these important topics, I have to do it. As somebody who is white, I can't sit back because it doesn't directly affect me as much as someone who is a minority. I still have to get out of my comfort zone and make these strides and do this work. Otherwise, we can't go forward as a whole society, as a whole country. My second question. It's extremely important for people from different backgrounds to work comfortable and well together. As we are learning through course readings, it takes time and it takes work to have people overcome their biases based off a person's identity contingency. So as an educator, as a teacher, I believe that students should leave my classes better people, and I understand that it is part of my responsibility to change those negative actions. I'm a math teacher, but I also need to facilitate learning around privilege and oppression as well as math curriculum. I'm mindful and I understand that a lot of students' behaviors have been learned from their surroundings, and they need people in their lives to change and inform them to benefit them in the long run and for future generations. So that's me thinking about myself as a teacher, as an adult in my school. So as an employee at my school with very diverse colleagues, I'm also mindful that I need to keep an open mind and appreciate the differences amongst us. I need to pay attention, be aware of the issues in our society, and make the commitment to work to change the system. Thank you for listening. That was a little bit brief because this chapter was pretty short, but that was my Chapter 11 summary and analysis of the discussion questions.